Welcome to the AI for Career Success video overview by Curt Robbins, where we help you get smarter than your competition. Today, we're looking at Meta's planned acquisition of an AI platform called Manus. On the surface, it might seem like just another big tech deal, but this one is different. It's a massive acquisition that's found itself right in the middle of a geopolitical tug-of-war between the US and China. And let's just put the stakes on the table right away. We're talking about $2 billion. A number that huge is always going to get people's attention, right? But believe me, in this case, the money is almost the least interesting part of a much more complex, much more strategically important story. And really, this is the core of the conflict right here. From Washington's perspective, this deal is a major strategic victory, a real win for American tech. But if you look at it from Beijing's point of view, they're seeing a potential and serious violation of their laws. It's the exact same deal, but it's being seen through two completely different and opposing geopolitical lenses. Now, all the information we're covering today comes from an excellent piece of reporting in TechCrunch. The article is called Meta's Manus News is Getting Different Receptions in Washington and Beijing, and it was written by Connie Loizos, published back on January 6, 2026. Okay, so let's start with the view from Washington. And what's really fascinating here is how the perception of this whole situation did a complete 180. It went from being seen as a potential problem for the US to suddenly being celebrated as a major success story for American policy.
This timeline really helps lay out how we got here. So it all started in early 2025 when a U.S. venture capital firm invested in Manus, which at the time was based in Beijing. Well, that investment triggered an investigation by the U.S. Treasury. So what happens next? Manus relocates its core team to Singapore. And it's only after that move that Meta swoops in and announces its plan to acquire the company. You can practically see the dominoes falling, one after the other.
And at first, the US government was not happy about this at all. We saw US senators complaining publicly on social media, and the Treasury Department started asking some very pointed questions. The big concern was that American dollars were flowing into China's AI sector, potentially violating new rules designed to prevent exactly that. But now, the script has completely flipped. Suddenly, because Manus has left China and is being acquired by an American tech giant, the whole thing is being framed as a massive win. It's being held up as proof that US policy is actually working, that it's making the American AI ecosystem a more attractive destination for top global talent than China's. But just as people in Washington were starting to celebrate, Beijing stepped into the ring, and they brought some unexpected leverage with them. Now, the whole conversation has shifted to a new question: China's technology export control laws. So, Chinese regulators are now scrutinizing this deal very closely, and they're asking two really critical questions. First, when Manus moved its core team and, more importantly, its intellectual property out of Beijing, did it violate Chinese law? And second, related to that, should the company have applied for and received an export license before moving that core technology?
This whole situation has really brought a new term into the spotlight: Singapore washing. So what exactly is that?
Well, Singapore washing is basically this phenomenon where Chinese startups physically move their operations, or at least their key people and headquarters, to Singapore. And it's seen as a strategic move, really. It's a way to get out from under China's very strict domestic regulations and to get easier access to international funding and markets. And that is precisely what has Beijing so concerned. They're worried that if this Meta-Manus deal goes through without a hitch, it's going to create a playbook. Other valuable Chinese AI startups might look at this and see a clear path to move their tech, their talent, and their entire operations right out of the country. And we should be clear, this is not just some empty threat. Beijing has used these exact same export control laws before. You might remember this from the whole saga around the attempted US ban of TikTok. The consequences here could be incredibly serious. In fact, one Chinese professor has warned that the founders of Manus could potentially face criminal liability if they're found to have moved restricted tech without getting the proper permissions. So where does all of this leave us? Well, in a state of deep uncertainty. You have this massive $2 billion deal that's essentially trapped, caught right in the middle of the competing interests of the world's two biggest superpowers. What probably looked like a pretty straightforward, though very large, corporate acquisition has now ballooned into a full-blown geopolitical standoff. I think it's fair to say that the situation has become way more complicated than anyone at Meta, Manus, or their investors ever imagined it would be.
So this really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? What does this mean for the future of global tech? Because no matter how this standoff gets resolved, it's going to set a major precedent. Is this the beginning of a new and much more complicated playbook for how innovation and talent can move around the world?
Thank you for watching. This is where we teach you AI and help you get smarter than your competition.
If you found this analysis helpful, please consider subscribing to the AI for Career Success YouTube channel. And of course, every like, comment, and share really helps us grow and reach a wider audience. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this.